Hi there, motorhome owners. Today on your 2018 Tiffin Allegro Open Road, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install SumoSprings for the front axle. You can see that it is a split bushing design, so that way our front suspension here can experience full travel unhindered by our spring, but still get all the dampening effects that we like from Sumos. The SumoSprings are designed to compress up to 80% to provide additional support for your suspension. Now, it doesn't increase the amount of weight that you can carry, but it just helps to support it so it eases the rest of your suspension. It also acts like a dampening device to help absorb impacts on the road when you hit potholes and stuff like that, rather than it transferring directly through your suspension into the chassis. Some of it does get absorbed into there to smooth out your ride. Additionally, our spring here wants to stay in its normal position, so if we have a heavy crosswind or perform an evasive maneuver and it starts to sway, as the spring compresses, it wants to push back to help us stay upright. So it will minimize how much sway we get and just help make your overall ride a smoother experience. Out on the test course, I would say that I noticed the biggest difference when installing a set of SumoSprings on the front and rear over all the other installations that we do here for the suspension enhancement on the motorhome. That's just the biggest that I noticed out on the test course though. All the components work together to really tame these big old beasts. Motorhomes are very heavy, they can be difficult to control, and the older they are, usually the worse they are. So SumoSprings are a great way to tame these big sloshy beasts that you're trying to keep in your lane and keep your family safe. You can get them for both the front and rear axle to help dampen things out, reduce sway, just get an overall smoother ride. We're going to begin our installation underneath our vehicle here. We're underneath the front of our motorhome. This is the front driver's side leaf spring here. There's the front axle right there, so engine right up there. We're going to first remove the factory jounce bumper, and that's located right here. Our jounce bumper is actually missing. The customer's is just gone. It must have got ripped off. There's a bolt still there though. This doesn't look like a different bolt than what you would normally find, because typically this bolt you would remove with a 13mm socket, but the head on this one is a 9/16. So looks like he may have had some service done and that bumper maybe was damaged or whatever and never got reinstalled. But we're going to be putting our SumoSpring in its place, so you will have a bolt there. On the other side, things are going to be the same way. He also doesn't have a jounce bumper over there, but you'll want to remove that bolt. The only difference between this side and the other side is that on the other side, the frame is kind of closed off here. So the nut is welded to the frame, so you just need to zip the bolt out of it. But here on the driver's side, we're going to need to use a wrench to hold the nut on the other side. So you will likely need a deep well socket with an extension to get up in here for your jounce bumper. And the jounce bumper usually sticks down about this far, so that's why you usually need an extension and a deep well socket to get up in there far enough. And normally you're going to probably have to use hand tools, but since ours is missing, we can use our gun here. And we're just going to remove the bolt. All right, and then we'll slide that down. Now once you slide your jounce bumper down, your bolt will slide out from the inside of it. Go ahead and slide your bolt out from in there, because you're going to need to reuse the bolt. We don't need the jounce bumper though, you can discard that. Our nut you'll also want to save. So now we're going to grab our upper bracket and put it in place. This is our upper bracket here. This bracket will install like this. These little ears here you see on the back side, they need to butt up against frame just like that. So that's how it's going to sit when it's installed. Before we fully install it though, we're just going to slide our bolt through the bottom from our jounce bumper, slide that up through the middle, and then we'll put our nut on there. But we don't want to fully tighten it all the way down yet. Kind of let that guy hang down, twist it around this way, just for a brief moment. While we've got it spun around this way, we're going to take the smaller bolts that come in our kit and drop it down into these holes. Because once we tighten this bolt down, you're not going to be able to get this hardware in. So that way we can get that in there and flip it back around, because again, those need to hook against the frame. And now we'll tighten down our hardware. So I usually prefer to push this up. That way I can have it against the frame the way that I want it. At least you can do that on this side. On the other side, you're gonna have to guide it as you tighten it down, and then we'll snug it up. All right, and both of our ears are hooked just like we need it to be. Our bolts are hanging down, so now we can grab our upper spring portion here and get this installed. So if we look at the upper spring, you can see that it's got 4 threaded holes in it. 2 of those are close together and 2 of these are further apart. The 2 that are further apart line up with the distance for those 2 bolts we drop down. So we're going to install it just like this. So I'm going to set this here, and then I am going to reposition myself. It's a little awkward from this angle. You can almost usually sit right next to the wheel. So now we'll just hold that up there and thread our bolt. And then once we get this one started, we'll head over to the other side here and start this one into the top of the bag for the spring. Once we've got both started, we'll use a 9/16 wrench to snug it down. There we go. And if you have a ratcheting wrench, it'll make your life a lot easier. The only thing I will say with the ratcheting end is when you stick it on here to tighten it down, after you tighten it down so far, maybe a few turns, you'll want to pull off that bolt, switch to the other bolt and start tightening that one. Because if you tighten one all the way down, you're not going to be able to get your open end of the or the box end of the ratchet with the ratcheting end on your wrench onto the next bolt because it'll be lifted too close to the frame. So you got to alternate a little bit, but it still saves you a lot of time. All right, once we've got the top half up there, we'll need to insert our bottom half. Now the bottom half's not likely going to fit unless you use your leveling jacks or a floor jack or something underneath the frame of the vehicle to raise the vehicle up, lifting it away from your axle here so you've got more space. I've already lowered down the leveling jacks some. I probably could have lowered them a little bit or further to give me a little bit more gap, but we should have enough there to get it installed. So here's the lower spring. It should come with the plate installed on the bottom there. If not, make sure you install the plate. It uses a tapered bolt so that way it's flush. Ours did come pre-installed, so yours should as well. You will notice though here, if we look at the spring, the holes on each side, one is further away than the other. So our spring needs to position a little bit towards the outside, closer to the wheel. So we're going to position it like this, with the spring that is closer to the hole towards the outside and the one that's got the further distance towards the middle of the vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and set it in place. Bring it around here, set it up in there. Once you've got your spring set up there, just go ahead and kind of center it underneath the upper one there. We'll then take the longer bolt, these ones are black in color, slide it down through our lower bracket. Then it seems a little weird, but you're going to place a washer on there. And then after the washer, you'll then place your other lower bracket, which has a small hook end, which hooks into the bottom here. So see if you can see that there. See how the bottom hooks underneath the kind of factory mounting position there, or the strike plate where your jounce bumper used to hit. So that'll hook just like that with the washer sandwiched between the 2 brackets. Then you can go ahead and start your nut. And then we're going to run this down a little bit. We're not going to fully tighten it just yet because we might need to move the bag left or right just a little bit to center it up. But we want to get rid of a lot of the slack in it because it makes it a lot easier to work with if we just get rid of a lot of that. So just find the position where you can get your tools in there and snug this down. You're going to use a 9/16 socket and wrench to do so. And again, we're not going all the way down. It's a locking nut though, so you're not going to be able to tighten it by hand. You are going to need tools. All right, so there we go. We've got it tightened enough to where it's kind of hooked in there and it can't fall off. That's about what we're looking for there. You can maybe go a hair tighter, and then we'll get the other side started and snugged up to that point as well. And then we can shift it around and finalize tightening it. Our other side's gonna hook on just like this side. So we've got our other side on. We then just centered our lower spring to where it lines up with the upper one, just trying to get it as centered as good as we can there, and then we'll snug it down. And that looks That looks pretty good. We're a little bit off to the one side, but we should be able to kind of tap it over just a little bit, and then that should take care of that for us. Once we've got both of them snug down, just recheck your fit, make sure it does line up with the hole there. That looks pretty good. It's not uncommon for you to have to be not perfectly centered where you're a little bit off to one side. They're not completely perfect. It's rubber, so it's got flex to it there. You know, it's a very flexible material. So as long as you've got the two lined up, they should connect with one another, and then we'll perform the same procedures on the other side to get that one installed. And that completes our installation of SumoSprings on the front axle of our 2018 Tiffin Allegro Open Road.